Never before in history has a queen been as reviled and cursed as Catherine de Medici, the woman infamously dubbed the Black Queen or the Poison Queen, from being born an orphan believed to be infertile, to becoming the most powerful woman of the 16th century. She endured bizarre and horrifying experiences few truly know. Was she truly a ruthless manipulator or merely a tragic figure? Today, we will uncover 20 shocking truths about Catherine de Medici's dramatic and mysterious life. Facts that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this powerful queen. Born between two graves and orphaned at birth. Catherine de Medici came into the world on April 13, 1519, in the vibrant city of Florence, Italy, during the Renaissance. The Medici family, though not noble by birth, had risen to immense power and wealth since the 1430s through banking, financing numerous European royal families and spearheading the cultural renaissance in Florence. This is why, despite Catherine's father, Lorenzo de Medici, being the Duke of Urbino and ruler of Florence, she was still seen as a noblewoman, but not quite among the highest echelons of Italian aristocracy. The marriage of Catherine's parents was arranged as part of a political alliance between King Francis I of France and Pope Leo X, Lorenzo's uncle, against their common rival, Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I. Yet just days after Catherine's birth on April 28, 1519, her mother, Madeleine de la Tour d'Auvergne, Countess of Boulogne, died from postpartum fever or the plague. A mere 21 days later, on May 4, 1519, her father, Lorenzo de Medici, also passed away, possibly from syphilis. The little girl Catherine, their only child, suddenly found herself an orphan right after birth, likened to being born between two graves. This tragically dramatic start shaped a turbulent childhood and highlighted the fragility of her destiny, as her life was constantly threatened by illness, war, and political conspiracies. The happiest childhood in a convent while held hostage. After the death of her paternal grandmother Alfonsina Orsini in 1520, Catherine was raised by her paternal aunt, Clarice de Medici, alongside her cousins. She received a Roman Catholic upbringing and an education befitting a noblewoman from nuns in Florence and Rome. However, this period of calm didn't last. In 1527, the Medici family was overthrown in Florence by a faction opposing Pope Clement VII. Young Catherine was seized as a hostage and moved from one convent to another. Surprisingly, she found stability and peace at the Santissima Annunziata delle Murate convent for 3 years. Astonishingly, Catherine described this as the happiest period of her entire life. How could being imprisoned be the happiest time? It shows the sheer terror she must have endured before then and the relative calm of her captivity. Nearly executed, stripped naked, and publicly abused. Catherine's early life was anything but serene. During the siege of Florence by Emperor Charles V, an alliance forged by Pope Clement VII to reclaim Florence for the Medici, chilling calls were made against Catherine. The rebels demanded her execution, even calling for her to be stripped naked and publicly used by the soldiers to humiliate the Medici family and exact revenge. This horrifying detail starkly reveals the brutality of politics at the time and how Catherine's life was constantly at risk from a very young age. Though she was eventually recalled to Rome safely by Pope Clement in 1530 and a suitable husband was sought, the experience of narrowly escaping public humiliation and murder undoubtedly scarred her, forging an extraordinary resilience and adaptability in her later years. Imagine the terror, the constant threat that shaped the woman she became. 10 years of infertility and immense pressure on a mediocre princess. Catherine married Henry, Duke of Orléans, the second son of King Francis I of France, on October 28, 1533, when she was just 14 years old. The wedding was an opulent, magnificent affair. However, this grand union quickly turned into a struggle. For the first 10 years of her marriage, Catherine remained childless. The pressure to produce an heir for the Valois dynasty was immense, especially after Henry's older brother Francis, the heir apparent, died in 1536. Henry became the new heir, and Catherine's ability to conceive became more urgent than ever. The situation worsened when Catherine's uncle, Pope Clement VII, died in 1534. His successor severed the alliance with France and stopped paying Catherine's substantial dowry. King Francis thus even lamented that the girl came to me naked. As a foreigner without a dowry and unable to bear children, Catherine faced enormous pressure to provide an heir and a spare to ensure the dynasty's survival. Under France's ancient Salic law, only men could inherit the throne, raising the stakes even higher. She was perceived as a mediocre princess and faced the constant threat of divorce or being sent back to Italy. This was one of Catherine's deepest pains during her early years in France, the constant fear of irrelevance, of being cast aside. Drinking mule urine and applying cow dung to conceive. In desperation, Catherine resorted to every natural and superstitious method imaginable to conceive, as bearing children was the most crucial factor in solidifying her position at the French court. This included drinking mule urine, an animal famously known for its infertility, and applying cow dung or crushed stag's horn to her body. She even invited alchemists and folk healers from across the land to try bizarre remedies, once even fainting after consuming them. These strange and crude methods reveal her absolute obsession and desperation to conceive, as well as her willingness to do anything to achieve her goal. At the time, female infertility was considered unnatural and was associated with witchcraft, having powers contrary to life itself. Whispers that Catherine practiced witchcraft began to spread, sowing the seeds for her later nickname, the Black Queen. Can you imagine the public humiliation and fear this must have caused? The secret to her conception lay with her husband, a surprising medical discovery. The true solution to the couple's infertility finally came from the royal physician Jean Fernel. After King Francis I heard rumors of Fernel's talent, he ordered the physician to examine both Henry and Catherine to find the cause. Fernel, a doctor who despised superstition and preferred a meticulous analytical approach, conducted a thorough examination. He discovered unusual bodily structures in Henry II, a congenital condition that made it difficult for him to impregnate women. This was a groundbreaking revelation that exposed the truth behind the whispers of Catherine's infertility and all the baseless witchcraft rumors. Fernel issued a unique prescription. It wasn't medicine or surgery, but rather a recommendation to change their sexual positions during intercourse. The young couple, both in their 20s, meticulously followed Fernel's instructions, experimenting with the prescribed methods and feeling utterly exhausted after each attempt. The results were astonishing. Catherine gave birth to her first child, Francis, on January 19, 1544, when she was 24 years old. She then went on to bear 9 more children, a total of 10, with 5 surviving sons. This guaranteed the survival of the Valois dynasty. The pressure was immense, and the relief must have been incredible, yet it still couldn't fix her marriage. Husband publicly cheated with a mistress, 19 years his senior, and the entire court knew. Despite Catherine having fulfilled her duty of childbearing, her marriage showed no signs of improvement. From the age of 15, Henry II had been infatuated with Diane de Poitiers, a woman 19 years his senior. Henry was utterly devoted to Diane and openly flaunted their relationship for the rest of his life. Catherine was ostracized and publicly humiliated. Royal ambassadors even reported that Henry would sit on Diane's lap and caress her breasts right in front of the entire court. Diane virtually usurped the position and privileges of a queen, even living in the Château de Chenonceau, which Catherine longed to possess. This personal humiliation was an inescapable part of Catherine's life, leaving her with no political influence as queen beyond the nominal power of regent when her husband was away. Catherine's position at the time was only solidified by her role as the mother of future kings. How would you feel if your husband flaunted his mistress in front of the entire court? Her husband's mistress actually encouraged her to have more children. One of the bitterest ironies in Catherine's life was her relationship with Diane de Poitiers. Although Diane was Henry II's public mistress and held greater influence than Catherine at court, she never saw Catherine as a threat. The reason? Diane had already usurped Catherine's position. In fact, Diane even encouraged Henry to spend time with Catherine and produce more legitimate children to ensure the Valois line was secure. Diane had likely already had children from a previous marriage, but she never bore any with Henry. This demonstrates how Catherine's role as a wife was severely diminished, reduced merely to a breeding machine to perpetuate the dynasty. This is a profound reflection of Catherine's lack of authority and overshadowed position as a royal wife, and simultaneously reveals the ruthless pragmatism of women in the power struggles of that era. Perceived as the Black Queen and a witch from the start, rumors that Catherine practiced witchcraft began to circulate right from her period of infertility. In an era when witch hunts were at their peak, infertile women were considered unnatural and were attributed powers opposite to life, meaning the ability to destroy health, life, and fertility. Catherine's connection to the famous astrologer and prophet Nostradamus, and even more suspiciously, to the Ruggieri brothers, who were believed to be involved in necromancy and dark arts, did nothing to help her reputation. Later, these accusations grew stronger after the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, leading to her being branded the Black Queen. The prejudices against Catherine as a cunning Florentine and a power-hungry Medici resurfaced. Even the black clothes she wore after Henry II's death to demonstrate loyalty to her deceased husband were twisted into the attire of a death angel. From then on, the image of the Black Queen became inextricably linked with Catherine to this very day, the broken lance symbol and perpetual black mourning. On March 31st, 1547, King Francis I died, elevating Henry and Catherine to King and Queen of France. However, Catherine wielded no political influence as queen. Catherine's power and influence truly began only after her husband's tragic death. On April 3rd to 4th, 1559, Henry II signed the Treaty of Cateau-Cambrésis with Philip II of Spain and Elizabeth I of England, ending over 50 years of the Italian Wars. This treaty was solidified by the marriage of Catherine's daughter, Elizabeth, to King Philip II of Spain. To celebrate, Henry organized a jousting tournament, his favorite sport. There, Henry recklessly donned the black and white colors of his mistress, Diane, openly flaunting their relationship. He defeated the Duke of Guise and the Duke of Namur, but then he was unseated by Gabriel de Lorges, Count Montgomery. Although Henry was injured, he stubbornly insisted on riding again and confronting Montgomery once more. This time, Montgomery's lance pierced Henry's eye and head, shattering his face. Henry was carried away, his face bleeding profusely. Catherine, Diane, and their eldest son Francis were all said to have fainted at the horrifying sight. For the next 10 days, Henry lay in critical condition, drifting in and out of consciousness. Catherine remained by his side, but Diane was conspicuously absent, fearing banishment by the Queen. Finally, on July 10th, 1559, at the age of 40, Henry died. From that day on, Catherine chose the broken lance as her emblem, inscribing it with the motto, Lacrimae hinc, hinc dolor, from here come my tears, from here my pain. She also wore black for the rest of her life in memory of her husband. This transformed her into a symbol of a loyal widow and devoted mother, but later her political opponents distorted this image into the attire of an angel of death. This gruesome accident and her response to it show the sheer unpredictable impermanence of life, even for kings. Purging her husband's mistress and reclaiming Chenonceau Castle. After Henry II's death, Catherine, at 40, began her first steps onto the political stage. She swiftly asserted her newfound power. She firmly demanded to be addressed as Queen Mother instead of widow, solidifying the image of a loving and devoted mother she wished to project. One of Catherine's first acts as Queen Mother was to force Diane de Poitiers to surrender the crown jewels and vacate the Château de Chenonceau. Chenonceau was one of the most elegant and unique palaces in France, which Catherine had coveted, but Henry had bestowed upon Diane. Furthermore, all those at court and in government who had been patronized by Diane were quickly replaced. This decisive and ruthless action reveals Catherine's long-suppressed fury at the public humiliations inflicted by Diane and her cold ability to retaliate when given the chance. It marked the ascendancy of Catherine de Medici from an overshadowed queen to a powerful figure, willing to use any means to achieve her goals. Her revenge was swift and absolute. Nostradamus as her personal prophet and drawing horoscopes for her children. Catherine de Medici had a close connection with the famous astrologer and prophet Nostradamus. This connection was not merely an interest in the occult, but stemmed from a mother's deep anxiety to protect her children and their dynasty. Nostradamus was invited to court and drew up horoscopes for her children, including horrifying prophecies about the future of the Valois family. One of Nostradamus's most famous predictions, Quatrain 135, is believed to have foretold Henry II's death. The young lion will overcome the old. On the field of battle in a single combat, he will pierce his eyes. In a golden cage, two forces one. Then he will die a cruel death. This prophecy is believed to have come true with Henry II's death in the jousting tournament. Catherine's connection with Nostradamus, and even more suspiciously with the Ruggieri brothers, who were believed to be involved in necromancy and dark arts, reinforced the witchcraft rumors and her association with the mystical world. This contributed to her Black Queen image, making her a target of criticism and associating her with evil deeds. Was she a visionary, or just another ruler seeking comfort in the unknown? Building a flying squadron of alluring female spies to counter the opposing factions forming at the French court and the increasingly chaotic religious situation, Catherine de Medici employed a unique and cunning political strategy. She assembled a group of beautiful and alluring women known as the Flying Squadron and l'Escadron Volant. These women were tasked with charming the gentlemen of the court, seducing them, and subtly extracting information about conspiracies and plans against the crown. This tactic allowed Catherine to obtain secret intelligence, anticipate her enemies' political moves, and effectively control the court situation. The use of the Flying Squadron demonstrates Catherine's cunning, her ability to psychologically manipulate, and her willingness to use any tool, even beauty and charm, to maintain her power. This is a lesser-known but fascinating aspect of her political genius, reinforcing the image of a cold, calculating, and cunning queen. Always carrying Machiavelli's book and applying a ruthless philosophy. One of the criticisms leveled against Catherine de Medici, and also one of the factors solidifying her Black Queen image, was her connection to Niccolò Machiavelli's work, The Prince. This book was dedicated by Machiavelli to Catherine's father, Lorenzo de Medici. When Catherine left Italy for France, she is said to have carried this book with her, and it became her guiding principle in life. She studied it meticulously, learning psychological and public manipulation strategies, becoming a master of such tactics. Catherine's use of the tactics described in The Prince to eliminate enemies with a single fatal blow became a sharp criticism, especially after the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. This reinforced the image of a cold, calculating, and ruthless queen. For her critics, Catherine was not just a ruler, but the embodiment of feminine evil, a student of Machiavelli. Although her ruthless nature was not fabricated, evident in her correspondence and the words of those who knew her, her reputation was permanently blackened by this connection. A paradoxical and failed policy of religious reconciliation. Although raised as a Roman Catholic and related to several popes, Catherine de Medici adopted a moderate stance and pursued a policy of reconciliation with the Huguenots, French Protestants. She prioritized peace over religious principles, likely due to her political acumen and desire for kingdom stability. She organized dialogues between Catholic and Protestant leaders, such as the Colloquy of Poissy, 1561, to seek compromise and resolve doctrinal differences. She even issued the Edict of Saint-Germain, 1562, to promote tolerance and appease the Protestants. However, this policy often failed due to France's deep religious divisions. The Vassy Massacre in 1562, when the Duke of Guise and his soldiers attacked worshipping Protestants, shattered all of Catherine's efforts. This event ignited the French Wars of Religion, which lasted for 30 years. After the surprise attack on the king in 1567, the Meaux ambush, Catherine eventually abandoned her policy of compromise in favor of a policy of repression. The failure of this reconciliation policy revealed a paradox in Catherine's perspective. She underestimated the depth of religious conviction and the ferocity of the conflict. Nevertheless, her initial efforts show another side of the Black Queen, one who prioritized political stability over extreme religious principles. Her controversial role in Admiral Coligny's assassination. After years of struggle and attempts at reconciliation, a horrifying event occurred that inextricably linked Catherine's name to one of the most brutal massacres in French history. On August 21st, 1572, just days after her daughter Margaret's wedding to Henry of Navarre, a prominent Protestant, Admiral Coligny, a Protestant leader, was shot while returning home from the Louvre. Although the bullet was removed and his injured finger was amputated, this event was a major blow to peace. Many historians have blamed Catherine for the attack on Coligny. Some argue she ordered the assassination to remove Coligny's influence over her son, King Charles IX. Others point to the Guise family or a Spanish conspiracy. Whatever the truth, this event was a major blow to Catherine's reputation and was directly connected to the subsequent saint, Bartholomew's Day Massacre. This remains a highly controversial point in Catherine's history. On one hand, she had arranged her daughter's marriage to a Protestant and invited key Protestant figures to Paris, aiming to create an opportunity for unity. On the other hand, the assassination of Coligny, whom Charles IX regarded as a spiritual father, sparked the subsequent bloodshed. The extent of Catherine's responsibility in triggering this massacre remains a subject of debate, but it contributed significantly to her cold and ruthless reputation. The triumphant laugh after the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. 2 days after Coligny's assassination, on August 23, 1572, the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre erupted. Catholic mobs slaughtered Protestants, Huguenots, en masse, sparing no innocent, including children, the elderly, and pregnant women. Bodies were thrown into the Seine and hung in the streets. In total, approximately 3,000 Protestants were killed in Paris and an additional 70,000 across France. After the massacre, Catherine's reputation was ruined. She was blamed as the mastermind behind the event, accused of being a student of Machiavelli, using ruthless tactics to eliminate enemies. The event was depicted in many paintings, often showing Catherine in black attire, coldly observing the violence. And a shocking detail spread like wildfire. Her son-in-law, Henry of Navarre, who had just married her daughter, knelt at the altar and converted to Catholicism on September 29th to avoid being killed. Ambassadors reported that Catherine laughed triumphantly at the sight. This laugh indelibly etched the image of a Black Queen, wicked and cunning, completely contrary to the devoted mother image she tried to cultivate. This is one of the truths that forever shaped her controversial legacy. Rumored to have poisoned Henry IV's mother with poisoned gloves. Before the wedding of Catherine's daughter, Margaret of Valois, to Henry of Navarre, a mysterious event occurred that further solidified Catherine's poison queen reputation. Henry's mother, Jeanne d'Albret, Queen of Navarre and a staunch Protestant leader, died suddenly after arriving in Paris for the wedding. Immediately, rumors spread that Catherine had poisoned Jeanne d'Albret with poisoned gloves. Jeanne was said to have fallen ill shortly after wearing a newly purchased pair of gloves, which then led to her death. Although there is no clear evidence to confirm this rumor and the cause of death may have been illness, the rumor spread throughout Europe, strengthening Catherine's nickname as the Poison Queen. The story of the poisoned gloves became part of the dark legend surrounding Catherine, further highlighting the image of a powerful woman willing to use ruthless and mysterious means to eliminate political rivals. This demonstrates how public opinion at the time attributed evil deeds to her, especially as she was a foreigner and a woman holding power. Imprisoning and executing her daughter's lover, disinheriting her daughter. Catherine de Medici demonstrated absolute and ruthless control over her family, especially her youngest daughter, Marguerite of Valois. Marguerite, renowned for her beauty and charm, had an open affair with a nobleman named d'Aubiac. Upon discovering the affair, Catherine became enraged and ordered d'Aubiac's arrest and execution. Although Catherine initially wanted d'Aubiac executed in front of Marguerite as a deterrent, this did not happen. Afterwards, Catherine took an even more drastic step. She removed Marguerite from her will and never saw her daughter again. Marguerite was banished to a fortress and had to live on the meager allowance her mother sent. This action illustrates Catherine's uncompromising sternness in preserving the dynasty's reputation and power, even if it meant severing ties with her own child. It shows Catherine's unwavering use of her supreme power to control the personal lives of family members, all to serve political goals and protect the crown. This was a mother who would sacrifice anything for the dynasty. Died from rage towards her own son. Catherine de Medici passed away on January 5, 1589, at the age of 69, possibly due to pleurisy, a condition that had confined her to bed the previous December. However, many believe her life was shortened by extreme stress and her rage over the impulsive and violent actions of her son, King Henry III. On December 23, 1588, Henry III, without consulting his mother, invited the Duke of Guise, leader of the extreme Catholic League, a major political opponent of Henry, to visit him at the Château de Blois. There, Henry committed his third great error. He ordered his guards to stab the Duke of Guise to death right at the foot of the king's bed. At the same time, 8 other members of the Guise family were also killed. After the murders were complete, Henry finally told his mother, begging for her forgiveness and justifying his violent act as necessary to prevent Guise from doing the same to him. Although Catherine's initial reaction is not clearly recorded, her son's actions certainly did not reflect her cautious and shrewd diplomatic approach. On Christmas Day, she prayed and lamented, "Oh, miserable one, what have you done? Pray for my son. I see him rushing to his own ruin." Just a few days later, Catherine died. It is commonly believed that her death was hastened by grief and anger over her son's reckless actions. This highlights the impermanence of fate and the emotional burden she endured in trying to sustain a crumbling dynasty. Which story about Catherine de Medici surprised you the most? What do you think about this queen? Was she truly the Black Queen history remembers, or a devoted mother and shrewd woman, as she wished to be remembered? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other strange and fascinating history stories. See you in the next video.